So today I'm going to talk about buying a property at your maximum borrowing capacity if you're buying an investment property and what it can do to you if you do not do the right due diligence and you just buy in your own backyard. I see this time and time again, and I want to do a video on this because I get asked this question a lot. Now, I'm going to come in at an average price that most people in today's society have a borrowing capacity of maximum averaging at $600,000, as we can see here. I've stated. Now, the average yield in Australia is 3.6%. So on a $600,000 property, that's a rental return of $420 per week. Now, buying this property at a 10% deposit, which is the most commonly used deposit in Australia, putting a 10% down. And what I've factored in is we've gone on a 3% interest rate, and we've gone on a principal and interest home loan package. So you're paying the principal and you're paying the interest as well for the property. Now, as we scroll down, I'm not going to get on too much. I've got our expenses. Okay, you got your interest repayments of 16 grand. You've got your council rates. You got your management fees. You got some levy fees. You got your insurance fees, etc. Now, after all the purchase this property with all your stamp duty, LMI, solicitor fees, insurance fees, etc., deposit, you're looking around $96,000. So don't worry, that's not too important. But what I want to talk about here, which is really important, is the cash flow. So this is a 3.7% yield. So 3.6 is the average in Australia. So it's a little bit higher. Okay, and we've left it at that. Now, if we look at this property, it's negative $10,000. So what I mean by that is this property is costing you $10,000 out of your own money to hold the property every single year. So the rent does not cover all the expenses. So that means that you have to put in an extra $10,000 a year to hold this property. Now, if you're buying an investment property, if the property does grow in value, whatever it grows, if it's 10%, 20%, whatever it may be, that's all fine and good. But if you're borrowed at your maximum and the property still costing you $10,000 and the property goes up, at 10 or 20%, the banks will look at that and say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, sorry, we cannot leverage or give you any more money because your personal situation, you're actually negative already $10,000 of expenses from your property, let alone all your lifestyle expenses as well. So it's something to forecast in. Now, this is not set in stone for everyone. If you're someone, everyone's got a different situation. But I wanted to state this because it's good to see this physically and have a look at what happens when you purchase a property at your maximum and the yield is not there because these properties are already negative geared. And a lot of these properties are you're talking out in the city suburbs. So as we scroll down, I've put in 7%. 6 to 7% is our average growth rate in Australia. So the property is growing 7% every single year. And as you can see, here we go. Here's our growth chart. At 600,000, you can see the property is growing in value, and by year 10, it's worth $1.1 million, just if it keeps continuing that 7% growth. And as you can see, we've got a cash flow, and it's decreasing every single year. And why it's decreasing is because you're paying the principal. So you're paying off the debt of the property. So as you get to year 10, you're still negative $5,000. So that's why a lot of Australian investors aren't successful. Statistics don't lie. 0.4% of Australian investors only have 3 or more investment properties. And this is because they do not take in consideration doing their due diligence and looking at, the finance situation, looking at what the property is going to cost them. Now, I want to show you what would happen if, let's say you bought something at 300,000, and let's say you've got a 6% yield. Okay. Now, why I'm doing this is because this is what we're averaging for our clients. We do not purchase anything under 6%, and because that's going to affect your lifestyle. I'm going to leave the loan product the same. So all it's changed, I guess, is the return. Now, I've left all the expenses. I've left everything the same. Of course, the property is a lot cheaper. As you can see, it's $47,000. This is a 6.3% yield. Let me minimize it back to 350, so it makes an actual 6 in total. So here we go. We've got a 6% yield. Okay, 6.1. This is negative $600 per year. Okay, so it's negative $600 per year. So it's costing you $600 just to hold the property, and that's on a principal and interest. Same thing, we're going to leave it at 7% average growth rate. as you can see, at 300,000, year 10, we're looking at just under $6,000, $600,000. So it's doubled in 10 years. Same with the other property that we had. Now, if we look at, it's negative geared in the first 2 years. So it's gone from 600 to 108. As you're paying the debt, it reduces. And as you can see, you start to be in a positive cash flow. By year 10, it's putting 2 in your pocket. Now, I haven't put in, interest only, and we haven't, I've taken consideration the rent, increasing every single year as well. So that's something to people for taking into consideration. This is for both properties. But what happens is with this property, you know, depending on your circumstances, depending on your income, depending on your expenses and liabilities, etc. But let's just say everything that, let's just talk generically. This property is not costing them a significant amount of money to hold the property. If anything, the property is actually putting money in their pocket after the second year, but you look at it, it's very minimal. $600, I think people spend more a year on clothes and materialistic goods. But if the property is costing you $600 to hold, it's not affecting your lifestyle, but not just that, you got an asset. So what would happen is if the property did, hypothetically, let's say this property did grow 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% in the first year, or even in between 2 years, the banks will look at it not as a liability to your life. They'll look at it as an asset because it's not costing you a significant amount of money to hold. Okay, and this is where the equity, you'll be able to use the equity. Now, some people cannot use the equity depending on their personal situation. Like I said, if you got a lot of expenses, a lot of debt, and it's affecting your lifestyle, the property itself, the bank, and you're leveraged to the maximum, they can look at that and say, you know what, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, we cannot let you use the equity, or release the equity, I should say. Where in this situation here, you haven't borrowed at your maximum, you've actually cut it in half, you bought an investment property that is growing the same, but if anything, it's actually cash flow positive, it's putting money in your pocket, so it's actually not a burden to your life. Now, at Fresh Start Advisory, of course, we're smashing the Australian average. We're more than doubling the Australian average. So properties are growing, 18% above for what our clients are doing. And, if something like that happens, let's say this property did grow 18%, you're going from 300,000 and then the next year it's 354, and if that's continuously for the next couple of years or through 3 to 5 years, you can start to see if a pattern starts to change, and of course your property starts to grow, and that will help you release that equity faster and quicker and use that again. But it's just, I wanted to paint the picture, not so much about the equity position, but just as well from a cash flow perspective, what this can do for you. Okay, now if you do not get this right and you purchase an investment property like the majority of Australians do, imagine this property is costing you $600 a year in the first year. Like the other property I just stated, the very first one, that's $10,000 a year. So that property is going to be a burden to your personal situation, especially if you've got kids and family, and of course you got to put the kids through school, and you got all the rest of the curriculum activities. You got to take in consideration. So this is super important, and I wanted to do this so people could see and I could paint a picture and what it looks like. People do not do this level of due diligence, and I think it's important. So if you do want a copy of this spreadsheet, please, after this video, comment in the comment section, let us know, and I'll give you this for free. Of course, this is something that we want to give out to people because it will give you a better understanding and give you your exact costs of what the property's going to cost you, including all your fees. If it's insurance, your buyer's advocate fee, your pest and building, if you're getting a valuation report, if you get your stamp duty, your solicitor fees, etc., it's going to give it a total. It's going to give you the total if you put all the expenses before you purchase the property and you just want to find out what exactly is going to cost you. And it's going to give you an exact total. And then at the bottom here, it's going to give you as well the total of the cash flow. Now, I'll give you an explainer video how to use this, but if you're interested, please let me know. But the moral of this video is, of course, understanding yields, understanding cash flow, understanding equity, and not just that, understanding not maximizing your borrowing capacity if you haven't done the right due diligence. So you get understanding, so you do not make the mistakes like majority of Australian investors. 0.4% of Australian investors own 3 or more investment properties. And, if you want to be in the 99.6% of Australian investors that don't own more than 3 investment properties, you have to do something different. So that's super important to make sure you want to be in that 0.4% of Australian investors that have 3 or more investment properties, and they're doing something different. So reach out if you need this spreadsheet to help you do an analysis on your property your investment property. It will give you clarity. It will give you, I guess, a better understanding of what this property can do for you.